This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be a substitute for mental health services.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Inc., a broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Financial Wellness are not affiliated.
Welcome to Financial Wellness. I'm Stephanie, along with my childhood friend Chad. This is the place where we unravel the intricate connections between financial well-being and mental health. In each episode, we explore the complexities of personal finance and how our monetary choices impact our emotional and mental states.
Here is where we also discuss and learn how to get better at everything from budgeting to investments to insurance. We share personal stories, expert insights, and practical tips to help you navigate those connections between your financial stability and mental wellness. Make sure to show some love by liking and following us. It really helps a lot. So let's get started. Did you want to go first?
Our mental well-being is directly linked with our financial well-being. We can bring some normalizing and even some humor to these situations. You know, we're both from New Orleans. We like to bring a little fun to the table.
Yeah. It becomes empowering and it becomes something that you control versus something that controls you. So, Steph, what's been going on?
It is Mardi Gras here in New Orleans. I am recording from my parents' house.
I'm jealous.
I know we had such a nice time. I think a lot of people who haven't been to Mardi Gras, obviously you have been here for Mardi Gras before, don't understand it as a season for sure.
Right.
And then don't understand that it's not Bourbon Street. It's so nice to just be with your friends, and it's this like big free party on the streets where you see generations hanging out together. And we had last night, we had like all the college kids coming back
Right.
to visit, and grandparents, and then our kind of middle sandwich generation all just having a ball together. It was wonderful. A lot of glitter.
Yeah, living out of state, it's always interesting when I tell people that we used to get a whole week off of school for Mardi Gras. Like it was its
Yeah.
own separate holiday. And then we got spring break. We got Easter week off after that. So it was this whole separate week. But yeah, no, I agree with you about the Bourbon Street thing. Like I didn't know that Bourbon Street got as crazy as it did, or that people did all
Right.
the things that they do until I moved away and went away to school and saw Mardi Gras on MTV because that was the
Right.
stuff that they would show. But,
Right.
growing up, I never knew any of that. Like we used to go and set up a picnic and it was a family
Mhm.
thing. We'd have food. We'd go and watch the parades. We watch the truck floats. It was a good time and we were safe. Like we would just walk around. We walk blocks from the parade route back to my aunt's house. And so it was a good family time.
It is. It's a time to really connect with your friends and family. It kind of, if I guess we could equate it to a giant tailgate with
Yeah.
Mardi Gras floats and bands.
Yeah. No,
That's what it is.
the thing that sticks out to me from Mardi Gras was eating hot dogs at my Aunt Mildred's house. And she lived about, for people who know New Orleans and know the parade routes, she lived about 3 or 4 blocks from St. Charles Avenue
Mhm.
and on Marengo Street. And
Perfect.
where her
Perfect.
house was, it was 3 or 4 blocks from St. Charles and also about 3 or 4 blocks from Napoleon Avenue. So
Yep.
we would walk up to Napoleon, go back to her house, walk up to St. Charles, go back to her house. Like my parents, grandparents, like a lot of our elder people in our family, they would just be hanging out at the house, talking and yapping. We'd leave, go to Napoleon, get some beads, come back. It was it was a great childhood.
It
Or
is. I know. Aren't we lucky that we grew
we,
up doing that?
yeah,
I
for
love
sure.
that.
For sure. And then God, the beats. Remember, like just going home at the end of the day, I would look like Mr. T, like with all the beads and everything, like just mountains of beads hanging around my neck. But I
Oh,
miss it. I haven't been in New Orleans for Mardi Gras since 2009.
you
So
have
it's
got
been a
to
long
come.
time. It's been a
You
long
have
time.
to
So
come.
I'm living vicariously through your Mardi Gras stories. And
I know. And I'm like reluctant to send it because I know like when I've been away, because I've lived outside of Louisiana so much of my adult life that it like physically pained me to see everything going on because I missed it so much.
yeah. Yeah. So in other news though, did I tell you that we got scuba certified?
Yay! Fully
We
certified.
fully certified.
All
Actually got
right.
we got our official scuba numbers last week, two
Oh,
two or
I
three
didn't, you
weeks
get
ago.
numbers? I
We get
guess if
numbers.
it's a
Yeah.
certification. Okay.
So once you go through the process of getting certified, you get an official PADI number, and PADI's one of the certifying organizations, I guess. But then when you go on a scuba trip, the organization that you go with, they want to make sure that you're certified, and each person gets a number. So you have to authenticate
They
yourself
have
with
to
a with
verify.
your scuba number and verify. Yeah. So
Makes sense.
we did our official dives January 28th, and we got our numbers 2 days ago, which we were recording on February 9th. So we received our numbers on the 7th. So we're official. We're ready to
Congratulations.
go.
Yay.
So, it's crazy when you're diving because I didn't realize just how much planning has to go into it.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
which makes sense, right? But it's just those things you don't think about. Like when we go in, like you sit with your dive partner and you have to agree and make a decision on how deep you're going to go, how long you're going to be, how long do you plan to be underwater,
mhm.
at what point um do you want to turn around and start ending your dive because you're about to run out of air, right? So it's all those things, and you don't really, and it makes sense because when you're underwater, you can't really talk to each other, right? You can be like, "Hey, man, I'm about to run out of air," and there's all these hand signals,
Right.
sign language, and everything that you have to learn to communicate with your dive partner, and so it all makes sense, right? Because the last thing you want to do is, drown, suffocate underwater. So it
Yes.
was it was really interesting the level of planning. So when we did our dive, we pretty much followed the plan, right? Our certification dive. We were supposed to go down like 45 feet, end up going down 52, which was great. We did it at the Blue Hole in New Mexico. Have you ever been to New Mexico?
I drove through New Mexico on my way to and from California
Okay. So so
when I
in
when I moved to California.
Okay. So in Santa Rosa, New Mexico, they have this thing called the Blue Hole. It's like one of, I think, 7 or 8 blue
Mhm.
holes on the planet. And it's like 60 feet wide. It's just this natural spring, I guess. It's
It's,
about 60 feet
it
wide.
looks scary as hell
Yeah,
to
frightening.
go deep into
Um,
it.
so we jumped in it like 5 years ago, just like you can like cliff jump into it. And it's cold. It's 61 degrees year round, but it's 81 feet deep, and it's shaped like an hourglass. So at the top, it's about 60 feet wide, but then the rocks, the walls kind of come in, and then they open up a little bit. And so I was super nervous. I was like, am
Bad.
I going to feel claustrophobic? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah.
But I didn't. Like it was really peaceful under there. Like did never really got nervous, never really got scared, and that was something I was really worried about. But with the dive plan, we followed our plan for the most part. We said we wanted to swim around.
Mhm.
There's all this graffiti on the walls, like because it's all rock, where people find like sharp objects and they etch their names in the wall. And I am dead serious to you. We were swimming around and somebody had etched in the rock, "Hi Chad,"
And
in the rock. And we saw it
it
on.
wasn't your wife?
So no, we saw it on the first day. And so when my dive partner and I made our plan for our final certification dive, I said part of the plan is I want to go down there and find that high Chad and take a picture of it with my GoPro. So we swam around, couldn't find high Chad. I didn't realize my GoPro had stopped working at the depth we were at the
Oh,
time. And so I was a little bummed out about that. But I did see my wife underwater and we were waving at him. And I wish people could see me right now. But imagine I had my GoPro strapped to my chest.
okay.
And I'm thinking the thing's recording, and I see my wife and her dive partner, and I'm like flailing my arms at them, like waving at them and pointing at my chest, like, do something, wave at the camera. So they're like underwater and they're waving at the camera, and I'm thinking I'm getting all this great video when it turned out that the thing wasn't recording at all. So super, super bummed out. Like only
That's
got
like,
like 15 seconds of video, and I thought I was recording for like 30 minutes. But so it was a good time. We got certified. We're gonna go on a scuba diving trip next month. So
do you think that having that plan that you could focus on really helped you to get past those fears that you had of going into water that was potentially like claustrophobic, especially because I mean, just hearing about it scares me, but did having a plan help you get through that?
yeah, well, knowing that if I got separated from my partner, we knew exactly what we were gonna do, right? We look for each
Hmm.
other for a minute, and if we don't find each other, we ascend. So, we knew that. All those different elements of things that we were supposed to do. We knew that, once we were done, that we would ascend and then we would stop about 15 feet from the surface to allow our bodies to regulate and before we fully ascend. Knowing that we were going around in a circle, knowing that my partner was there next to me, and our plan was for us to swim side by side. I would be on his left, so I was really focusing more on what we're going to do, focusing more on where he is. I'm looking back to make sure that he's there with me, focusing on checking my air pressure, making sure that I have enough air in my tank. So all those different things that we're supposed to be doing, you're right. You're focusing so much on that I don't have time. I didn't have time in my brain to think, oh my God, I'm so
Mhm.
far deep. Oh my goodness, didn't have time to think about any of the potential dangers, but also thinking about how you breathe underwater. Because they teach you, breathe in for 3 seconds, breathing out for 4 or 5 seconds or so. So even thinking about how you breathe as part of our
Right.
plan, not only does it occupy your brain and what you're thinking about, but also just the practice of breathing that way becomes
Uh-huh.
very relaxing. And
Yes.
so when you're relaxed like that, it just helps you kind of settle down. And so
You
it
know,
alleviates fears and everything else.
yeah, and I hear that the big piece that I hear there is you planned for safety and you were specific. I mean, not
Yes.
you, the diving people. They know
Yeah.
what they're
But
doing. They've
but
been doing
yeah, but
this a
we
while.
were because they had us plan it out ourselves. So yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's actually even better
Yeah. Yeah.
because you took ownership over the plan.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I'm sure the listeners are like, okay, I know you're talking about something else too, but I think I think this really is a nice segue into our topic today, which is the benefits of having a plan. And that
Yeah.
goes for your financial well-being as well as your mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having a plan does all those things, right? It helps you kind of
Mhm.
focus your attention, focus your next steps. It helps you to be proactive, just in general. having a plan helps you do that. I mean,
Right.
generally speaking, what do you in your world, what do you see as the benefits of planning?
I think having a plan can do all of the things that you were talking about. It can alleviate fear, it can help to focus your attention. But I think one of the things that people sometimes do is they're either not specific enough, so the plan is very difficult to follow, and they're not exactly sure what to do, or some people overthink and plan for the inevitable the worst case scenario, which would is highly unlikely. So, you've probably heard me say this before, but stress in general, anxiety in general is either us trying to overplan for the future or to correct the past, which is impossible. So being really grounded when you create a plan and being specific about the steps and what you want to do and what you want to accomplish and breaking it down into small pieces, those are the ways that plans help with stress.
Hmm.
Um, not, I want to lower my stress and anxiety. So I'm going I'm not going to worry about this aspect of life. I'm like, we're going to need a specific plan.
Right. Well, it seems like to get there, you have to be really specific and serious about whatever your end goal is, right?
Exactly.
And knowing what that is and kind of starting there. I know I've had folks when I'm trying to get them to seriously talk about their goal, they'll say, "Well, I want to retire and have a lot of money."
Right.
Like,
Don't we all?
don't we all? Like, what? So, what does that look like exactly?
Mhm.
Let's dig a little deeper into that. What does that look like? But yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Being specific inside of your planning is critical, right? So we're talking about specific goals and one of the things that I think is critical, and I know it gets overdone, but we talk about SMART goals.
Oh, I was just about to talk about SMART goals. I
Well,
love
perfect.
them.
It's one of those things too. It kind of gets people don't take them seriously, or it seems like it's sort of cliche, but I think
Mhm.
it's critical,
Yeah.
right? So like so for people who don't know, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound, right?
Exactly.
So having a specific goal and being able to measure it, making sure that you can actually achieve it and that it's realistic. And then time bound. Like I want to retire at age 60, right?
Hmm.
Or I want to pay for my daughter to go to college in 7 years. So,
Is that specific? Is that relatable to you?
right. Or you know what though? That's actually not even specific enough, honestly.
No, no, you're right. You're exactly right.
Because if I said I want to pay for my daughter to go, if I had a client tell me I want to pay for my daughter to go to college in 9 years or 7 years, so my next question as an advisor would be, okay, well, what school do you
Hmm.
want to send her to, or what's the amount of tuition that you would want to pay,
Are we
right?
looking out of state, in state?
In state,
Are we
out of
looking
state.
private,
Um,
public? Yeah.
do you want to cover full tuition, or is there a set dollar amount that you want to pay for, and then either you're going to get loans or financial aid for the rest? What is the amount that you want to pay for, regardless of the school, right? So I've had people say they want to pay. I've had a range of folks, right? Some people say they want to pay. I want to pay 10,000 a year. Some people say I want to pay 20,000 a year. Some folks say I'm going to cover the full boatload of, the best school in the country, which is now like when it's all said and done, you're paying about $80,000 a year, which is just
Oh,
completely it's
wow.
completely nuts. Um, but yeah, no, it's interesting. I just met with some folks and they're full out of pocket, and they're paying about 80, a little over 80,000 a year for college.
Really a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
That
But they plan
that
for it.
that's they plan for it, but
They
the
plan.
child won't be making $80,000 when they get out of college for the first few years.
Well,
They might.
possibly. But yeah, but the point is that they plan for that, and so that was part of their goal. And
That-
so, but yeah, the cost of college is probably a whole separate topic that we'll have to cover at some point.
I
But
think so.
but what's interesting as it relates to clients and money and investments and everything is a lot of times uh, I come across people all the time. They either have not or not necessarily considering uh, putting together a plan. A lot of
Right.
folks will want to either just um, purchase a product, right? They want to purchase an investment account, they need to get an insurance policy or whatever, or they see information on TV and think that financial planning is just buying stocks or buying investments and not thinking about the goal or the end goal in mind when they start this process. And that's really what planning is doing, is
Right.
starting with the end in mind. And so that a lot of that is critical to not only your financial picture, but also just the way that um, your brain processes the benefits of what you're doing.
And as you're talking, I'm also thinking about we have the benefits of planning along with before we do the planning, we're also building some awareness. And I know
Hmm.
you and I have spent a lot of time talking about, one of the barriers to creating a budget or creating a financial plan is the fact that people do not want to look at their money. It is something that stresses them out, and they don't feel like they have the knowledge that they need to move forward. So that awareness comes before the planning process, and it alleviates stress. People say, well, okay, if I don't think about it, it's not there. It's always there. It's
Hmm.
always there. And and especially when it comes to money, we have to face money every single day in some way.
Right.
Like I was thinking about this the other day, like one weekend, I stayed home pretty much all day and I cleaned and I ate the food that I had at home, and I was like, I don't think I spent a single penny today. I mean, obviously, you pay your bills and you use your electricity and your water, but in on a day-to-day basis, we have to face our money. Do I have enough money to pay for this? What have
Right.
you? And you don't have to ask yourself those questions when you have a plan in place. And it can really it can really alleviate a great deal of stress in your day-to-day life. Even if you do not think things are going to be looking good, it empowers you and it encourages you to propel forward, even if it's bad, to put a plan in place to make it better. I hope
Y-
that makes sense when I say
Yeah.
that.
No, it
Yeah.
it makes absolute sense, and it's a roadmap, right? I was talking to a friend of mine. I think I had mentioned this before, but I was talking to a friend of mine who is a basketball coach, and one of the things that came to mind is that having a plan is kind of like, working with a coach and developing a strategy, right? So, you know, one of the things that came to mind was talking to the coach. One of my questions is, well, during a game, do you just call random plays,
Hmm.
or do the plays that you call fit within an overall scheme or an overall strategy, right? And, hopefully the obvious answer is that they fit in an overall scheme or strategy. And and that's really the financial plan. It's your overall scheme, it's your overall strategy for your own entire financial picture, right? And then that plan helps you to achieve your goals. It helps you achieve your short-term goals, helps you achieve your long-term goals, and it's also a living and breathing thing, right? It changes over time because people's life situations change over time. You may get a new job, your income may change, you may have kids. And so, your expenses and your lifestyle is going to completely change. You may move to a new house. You may move to a new city, which is something that we've talked about. Um,
Yeah.
all these life events will happen. You may lose a loved one, a spouse may pass away. Um, so all of these life challenges happen, and eventually people will retire,
Hmm.
hopefully, right? So, a lot of these things change. So over time, your plan adjusts and it changes, and so it's always a living and breathing thing. You get a snapshot of where you are today. You look at where you want to be, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and then the plan puts together that roadmap to help you get there. And it seems like having a roadmap uh, to your end goal. Even if you don't stick to it 100%, having that guideline seems like it's helpful, right? At least helpful
Absolutely.
emotionally. I know it's helpful financially, but helpful emotionally.
It is. And one of the things that sometimes does happen with people who have extreme anxiety is they can overthink, overplan, because there is such security in, we don't know what's going to happen next. We can't predict what's going to happen in the future. And so creating a plan that feels comfortable for you moving forward, whether it's your financial well-being, it works for things like I'm trying to exercise more now. I have a plan that I'm going to do, I'm trying to eat healthy. It works for everything.
Right.
So you create these plans and they provide a sense of security. The there's a line over which sometimes, and this probably happens to everyone at some point, where you overthink all the possibilities of what will happen. It's a little bit different. It's not quite the same as having a plan, because a plan is going to be more deliberate. There's the overthinking that happens here in our brains, and that's more of a spiral than actually creating a step-by-step process. So I just wanted to delineate the difference between that and why it's so easy to kind of slip into the overthinking, because plans feel so secure, and people will come up with myriad, like 100 different plans for what would happen if I walked in the door and this person said this. No, what if they said this to me? What if they said that?
Right.
So that's a little bit different. And that can cause actually a lot of problems in your life, because it's it's very hard to move forward when you're planning for about 100 what ifs.
Right, right, 100%. And it's interesting. You mentioned an exercise plan. I think also kind of alluding to within the benefits of a plan, actually having something written down and writing it down and making it real. As you were talking, I was thinking about these exercise plans that my wife and I had devised because I was feeling like, oh gosh, I need to work out, but I don't feel like I'm getting any results and anything. This a couple months ago. So we actually wrote down monthly exercise plans and really monthly
Yeah.
fitness plans where each week we would check off, specific goals that we wanted to accomplish. So, exercise, for 20 minutes at least three times a day. um, Track our meals. We have these meal trackers on our phones. So we want to track our
Mhm.
meals and do that at least 4 times a day. And then we had check boxes where we would actually go and check off what we were doing, deciding if we wanted to drink any or how we were going to limit having an alcoholic beverage, right? So all these different things but what was been really beneficial was that we wrote it down. We had little check boxes on it, and each day, and we kept it on the refrigerator, and each day we would go and we would check it off. And it was really helpful to kind of follow along and do that. And so we did that in December, did it in January. I've been admittedly lazy and I haven't created one for February, but I will do that today. But no, having that written plan is critical. And then two, you also mentioned, what happens when the unpredictable occurs and what the benefit of the plan when the unpredictable happens. And as it relates to having a financial plan, what's been really beneficial is when the stock market turns and has a negative year. So we had a really bad year in the stock market in 2022. And I have clients who are wondering, if they're going to be able to retire. And it's really comforting to be able to go back to the plan and know, you know, here's what the numbers look like. Here's your retirement goal. Here's how the most recent market downturn impacted your retirement plan, but you are still able, based on our assumptions, you're still able to retire when you said you wanted to retire. And so the plan gives a certain degree of comfort when uh, negativity or unpredictable things out of our control happen. And market fluctuations is certainly one of those.
Yeah.
So being able to not only see that you're still on pace, but also it's empowering having the plan to be able to then go back to that person and say, and we plan for this. We know the market's not going to always just be positive every year. So we planned for this. We knew this would happen at some point, so we planned for it. And now, you're still on track, in part because we did plan for it.
So where were we, Chad?
So we were talking about planning.
Oh, yes, I like that. When I was hearing you talk about, like what you and Melita doing the plan together, the meal planning and the tracking and kind of doing it together. I think that also is another aspect of planning that is sometimes overlooked. I think it's important to communicate your plan to others
Hmm.
and maybe not as much like you're not going to go, just tell everyone about your financial plan, but there are going to be people in your family who will be impacted by the financial plan. One of the things that I see a lot in the couples that I've worked with is that one person knows all of the money pieces
Hmm.
and has a plan and they're feeling pretty comfortable, but the partner knows nothing and feels completely um stressed out, worried, unsure. They're they're they don't even know what they have in their bank accounts. So I think sharing plans with the important and correct people is a part of lowering stress and making sure that you're not making unilateral decisions for your family. I was just talking to a friend last night who, when the kids go off to college, she's ready to sell the house and downsize. And her
Hmm.
partner, not so much.
Yeah.
So they have loose plans in their head, but that's a pretty significant
Yeah.
thing to figure out. And that's, not unusual.
Yeah. As a planner, I always try to have both spouses in the room when we start working and we start talking, particularly in the beginning of the process, the beginning of the process, you're really just talking about goals. What is it
Right.
that you're trying to accomplish? What is it that's most important to you? What do you value, right? So the beginning of the financial planning process is really trying to get a clear picture of what's important to the person. What are the goals? What are the things that are important to you? And when you're talking to just one person, it's I don't want to say that it's a waste of time, but it's difficult to
Mhm.
get the real answers. And but also to your point, I see all the time people, spouses where one person knows all the details and the other person doesn't. And in some cases, that's by choice. Like
Oh,
that's just how
yes,
their relationship is, and one
absolutely.
spouse doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And so and typically what I've seen is that it's in some cases it's the husband that kind of knows everything, and for the majority of cases like that that I've seen, that's how it's been. And I'll
Mhm.
tell you a story. I actually was working with this woman whose husband had passed away, and this was about 5 or so years ago. Her husband had passed away, and he handled all of the financial decisions. Like she had no idea what any of the accounts were, how any of them worked, and all that. So when he passed away, I was introduced to her and I started working with her and took her through this planning process to really get an idea of what was it that she wanted to do. Did you want to go back to work? Do you understand what all the investment accounts are? Do you understand how the pension works? Do you understand how the Social Security works? And it was so hard for her because not only are you trying to get a crash course in how all these finances are working, but you're also having to deal with losing the person that
Yeah,
you love.
grieving.
And so you're trying to process all these numbers and everything while grieving. And how much easier would the financial piece had been had she been included in the planning from the beginning? Sometimes I've heard some of these old school insurance agents. We used to listen to these tapes from these old school insurance agents from, the 1960s and 70s, how they used to sell life insurance. And they would tell these stories about how they would sit with a husband and wife and they would ask the wife, how much insurance would you need if your husband passed away? And the husband would immediately jump in and start answering the question. And the old school guy would say, no, see, they talk back in the 50s
Yes.
like, no, see, you're dead. You can't you can't speak right now. And I'm only talking to her. And they would, essentially they would force the spouse to answer the question. How much do you need? Like, do you have an
Hmm.
understanding of the expenses? But it would force that person to really dig deep and not just sit back on the sideline. Because what if your spouse did just pass away an hour ago? What would you do? And so in some cases, putting people into that seat and really making them answer the question in a safe environment, can sometimes help trigger that. It's really important for everybody to be on the same page and understand what needs to be done.
I agree. I think this brings up another topic that I think we'll have to do a whole episode on, which is end of life planning.
Oh, absolutely.
Talking about death scares people a lot, but
Right.
it's a necessary act
Well, and
for
it's
all the
so.
reasons you just stated and many more. Sorry, I totally interrupted you.
No, not at all. I think I was trying not to interrupt you too. But it totally fits into your financial plan because your financial
Right.
plan also factors in your mortality. And
Hmm.
so when you're planning, you're also planning to make sure that you have enough income throughout your life expectancy. Each family too will have a different expectation of life expectancy. I was just meeting with some folks last week and we were looking at life expectancy, and I initially used sort of a default age of 90 for life expectancy. And sometimes I'll ask folks, is there longevity in your family? And
Hmm.
so we were just starting out this planning process, with the default age of 90. And the husband said, people in my family live to be like 95, 100.
Wow.
And so, I made the adjustment. But seeing not just the understanding what the life expectancy is, but once you really start digging into a plan
Hmm.
and you see how income can potentially decrease once
Hmm.
one of the spouses passes away is also a critical part of planning. Like, we want to make sure that we have income for both spouses. Um,
Right.
it also impacts, if someone has a pension, which, there not as many people have pensions today as they used to, but if someone has a pension that only covers one life and it doesn't cover both lives, how
Hmm.
does that impact the overall plan? So yeah, end of life planning is absolutely critical. And you're right, it's one of those things that's super hard for people to talk about, but
Isn't
it's
that what they blamed? Didn't they, like, Obama had put in his plan years and years ago, um, end of life planning, and they were like, they condemned him for that.
I
And
don't
it was
remember
just,
that.
oh yeah. We'll have to look that up, and see what that was all about. Um, but yeah, it was, I think and the reason I remember it is because it was one of the first times I really thought about it, and I
Yeah.
thought about how important it was. So, I mean, I guess we were much younger then, so it just wasn't on my mind. And my
Hmm.
parents were in good health, and you know,
Hmm.
so it really, that was the time when it was on my mind for the first time. I was like, what is this? I need to look into this.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. You mentioned end of life planning, and I have to tell you about this story. I was working with these folks, and we're working through a financial plan. The husband was retired military, and we were talking about long-term care. They had mentioned that they wanted to be cared for at one of the veterans hospitals.
Mhm.
So out here in New Mexico, we had two. And so I called one of them, and both of them are in these small towns. And so I called. I asked them, I was asking about how their system works, and the woman who runs the facility was telling me that, there's a wait list, and you get on the wait list, and once a bed opens up after someone has had their celestial discharge from the military, then a bed will open up. And I was sitting there and I said, celestial discharge. And she goes, when they pass away. And I was like, no, I know what you meant. I just never heard that term. That's pretty fantastic. Um,
Oh my
so,
goodness.
that we may have to have a new podcast and call it celestial discharge.
Oh,
But
there's so many things I want to say about that.
I mean, that can go a lot of ways. Uh,
Well, and I was thinking, like, we've been talking about the importance of having a plan. Maybe you could just break down what are the basics? What are the elements of a financial plan?
the elements really center around the things that we should do to protect ourselves and the things that we want to do, right? So we look at it kind of like your foundation. Like if you imagine a house and at the bottom is your foundation, like what are the risks that are there? And the first part is sort of making sure that you're planning for some of those little annoying things that pop up, those little emergencies, right? So having a budget is kind of where we start. So budget planning, making sure that people are saving to make sure they have money set aside for emergencies. We call it emergencies and opportunities, right? So emergencies could be like, you're driving and, your car gets a flat and you got to replace your tire. And, I just had to replace the tire. It's almost $200, right? So just making sure that you have money set aside for emergencies. And typically, an emergency fund will be about 3 to 6 months of your expenses, monthly expenses, generally. And that number can change depending on the type of employment you have. Are you Are you working at a steady job, or are you an entrepreneur where you have unsteady income? Then you may have want to have more money set aside. But the general rule of thumb is about 3 to 6 months. So, making sure that you have money set aside for emergencies, and having an emergency fund is really kind of that first pillar of your foundation.
Hmm.
And then the other pillar of your foundation is really planning for those major risks that could really wipe you out financially in a day, right? And that could be, a major liability, like you rear end somebody in your car by accident, right? Now they have all these major medical expenses. They have, the issues of fixing their vehicle. Maybe it's multiple people inside of a car that you've rear-ended, and now it's multiple medical expenses you have to cover. It could be the death of a loved one. It could be that and what if you have a death of a loved one, like we talked about, and that loved one is the breadwinner in the family,
Right.
right?
Right.
So now there's a major income that's no longer coming into the house. It could be a major health issue. I think, I don't know if you recall, I had to stay in a hospital like 2 years ago, and I was in the hospital
What
for like
can I
two
do?
days. Yeah, I had like a stomach thing. It was weird. It was like this rare mental infarction. It's like this weird thing. Like part of my stomach lining died basically, and then
Oh no.
and then like to totally gross you out, like my body just consumed it and then healed itself. It's weird.
The healed itself part's pretty
Yeah, it's
amazing.
pretty cool. But I was in the hospital for 2 days, and when I was in the hospital for 2 days, most of my insurance covered it, but I still came out of pocket like $2 or $3,000.
Oh
And
my
but when you
gosh.
think about like if people who have to be in the hospital who have major illnesses, right? You're in the
Right.
hospital 2, 3 weeks, or your ongoing stays in the hospital, that can be
Mhm.
financially devastating. You know,
And when you're older, those hospital stays, those long hospital stays, then come with limited mobility, which you have to try to regain by
right,
doing like physical therapy and
right.
appointments and more doctor's visits. It compounds upon itself and people can just get into a hole.
So all those things, right? So all those are major financial risks. So part of your planning has to be considering how are you going to plan for those things? Are you going to cover them with your own assets, or are you going to shift that risk to an insurance company? And when you have these conversations, it's also important to understand that covering these things doesn't always mean purchasing an insurance policy,
Mhm.
but it does mean seriously planning for these potential risks and having a plan in place and how you're going to handle it. In a lot of cases, insurance will be the answer, but it's important that your plan addresses the risks. And if your plan is I'm going to cover it with my own assets, then fantastic. If your plan is I need to cover some of this with insurance, fantastic. But having a plan in place so that if something like that does happen, you're not wiped out financially.
Right.
So, so those two are really your pillars, right? The budget planning and the risk planning. And then that opens up the future planning, right? The fun things that we want to do. We
Hmm.
want to retire at a certain age, right? We want to hopefully be able to travel and see kids or see grandkids or pay for college. If maybe pay for a child's wedding at some point. So, all of those long-term planning elements are built on that foundation, because if the foundation is rocky and something catastrophic happens, then it impacts the long-term future planning.
Right.
But what's also important to understand is that, again, going back to the story about the coach and calling plays, any one of those individual elements inside of the plan would be a play, right?
Right.
Setting up an investment account over here, setting up an insurance policy over here, and they're just done sort of randomly. But when you have a financial plan and you're doing all of these setting up all of these accounts within the construct of your long-term goal, it starts to make more sense with all these things kind of working together and factoring in your current cash flow and making
Right.
sure that you have the right amount of insurance that covers your risks while not making you cash poor, investing in your retirement accounts while also simultaneously making sure that you have enough money set aside for savings, that your debts are being paid or paid off completely. So really looking at all of these elements in the aggregate and seeing how they all work together is really your elements of your plan.
Yeah, I think so few people know. I mean, obviously you're trained and this is your area of expertise, but so few people, I imagine, know how to do this. I'm thinking they would have to go to a person to help them with this process. And I know you and I have spoken about like, how do you find someone? How do you go about this process? Like, do you have any advice for people who really are, listening to this and thinking, yes, I want a plan. I don't want to just put my money into this insurance and hope for the best and put my money into this investment and hope for the best. I know we have kind of limited time
Mhm.
before we end our episode, but I was just curious what advice you would have for people in that area.
Yeah, I mean, finding someone that you feel comfortable working with is a difficult process. It's
Hmm.
difficult for the individual. It's difficult for the planning industry. I mean, that's really how planners continue their businesses by getting introduced to new people. So one of the most popular ways that people find planners is through referrals and recommendations, right? So it could be that you have a friend who's been working with a financial planner and they like that person and that person they feel like that person has done a good job for them, so they may refer you to that planner. So one of the things I would recommend is for people to consult their friends and ask them if they've worked with any financial planners and if there's any that they recommend, and then but interview those people, right? Find out how they work, find out if your personalities work well together, right? Somebody that you feel like you're going to be comfortable working with. But
Someone you trust or someone you
someone
could trust.
someone you trust, someone you feel like you could trust. We always I was always told by, people, trainers that I've had, is that people want to work with folks that they know, like, and trust.
Yes.
And the only way to figure that out is to sit and interview people. So one way is through referrals from friends. Another route is to go through industry organizations, right? So most towns will have organizations that financial advisors and financial planners and insurance agents are a part of. One is NAIFA, the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. There are member advisors that are part of NAIFA. There's the Society of Financial Professionals, the CPA Society. There's a ton of societies out there. You can also go to Google and say, "How do I find a financial advisor?" Right? Something as simple as that. But ultimately, you're going to need to sit down and interview people. And
Yeah.
I suggest too that, once you do sit down with an advisor, ask them if it's okay for them to interview a couple of your clients. Get a feel for whether or not they feel like they're going to do a good job for you. But yeah, it's one of the more challenging pieces. But also, I recommend when people go to interview a financial planner that they also go with their own personal goals in mind. Why are you visiting a planner? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Is there a specific goal that you're trying to achieve? Are there multiple goals that you're trying to achieve? Like, I've had people come to me because they really want to get organized. They want to get their financial house in order and they want to get organized. I've had people come and they just need to get a quick life insurance policy because they started a business and they need to have a life insurance policy in place. Some people have come because they want to, roll over a retirement account. Whatever the reasons are, have a set of reasons to go and meet with a planner. And that doesn't mean that you have to have a ton of money either. And that's another one of those misconceptions
I was
is
going to
that,
say that's a myth.
right. People think, oh my gosh, I don't have enough money to go see a financial planner. Pretty much every planner advisor that I've ever known will do at minimum an initial consultation at no charge. So
Hmm.
there should be no cost for you to go and interview advisors. And that's a good place to start.
I think I think that's really good advice, especially because I would imagine a lot of people do not know that a consultation would be free
Yeah,
and that they have the ability to do those interviews. I think some people's jobs will come with that as a benefit. But what if you don't trust that person? What if they don't
right.
feel like it's good for you? Really, I feel like that what you're telling people is very empowering. So I really appreciate it so much.
Yeah. And then two, a number of planners will offer educational events and seminars.
Mm.
And in some cases, they will invite people in mass, right? They'll work with these marketing companies and send out these invites. And a lot of us throw those away. We get them in the mail, we throw them away. But if they're providing information that you feel may be helpful, I would encourage people to go and just sit and listen. And if anything, it'll trigger questions and trigger some interest in whatever topic is being covered, and it may generate additional questions for other topics, right? For other financial areas. But I encourage people to take advantage of presentations that advisors put on. In a lot of cases, they even buy you dinner,
Ooh.
which is which can be nice. But yeah, I would take advantage of that as well.
These are all really good tools and it's very helpful information. I really appreciate it. So as we're wrapping up, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today as we're exploring the connections between financial well-being and mental health. Let's remember that achieving financial well-being is not just about the numbers. It's about fostering a healthy relationship with money and understanding its impact on our mental and emotional well-being.
So join us next time as we delve into the emotional benefits of budgeting. Remember to like and subscribe, and until next time, make sure to take care of your mind and your wallet.
Bye, y'all.